What's up, Hoof listeners? Welcome back to the Hoof Podcast as we move on to the divisional round of the playoffs.
Woot woot.
Doing it.
Let's go, baby.
Seemed like a pretty easy day overall, but just want to mention the rumor going around Buffalo, and I'm sure our listeners are probably mostly from Buffalo, right? But if not, I got to get this story out there because this is just hilarious. My brother-in-law's actually got a lot of connections in Buffalo, right? He went to college there. He lived there for a number of years. So you'll remember when the guy was on acid or whatever and like covered himself in shit and went in the construction zone, the new stadium, right? And
fell in the hole.
Helicopter had to come save him, right? And I was actually at that game and I saw the helicopter flying over. So I didn't know what he was doing, obviously, but afterward, we knew he was picking up that crazy bastard. Anyway, there's a rumor going around Buffalo. There's been multiple sources at local hospitals that say every week since then, somebody has fallen into the pit and been reported to the hospital with injuries or, whatever.
Just wandered over the construction site?
Yeah,
I mean, I think that first week it made sense, but because it was just a hole in the ground. But now there's actual construction going on there.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's concrete and, things happening there.
That's
so
dangerous, especially if you're 12 beers deep.
Right?
Yeah,
but
not
I mean,
a safe place to be. If you're
it's not so
deep.
much a pit anymore. It's actually you could probably climb down it, but I'd imagine
people are getting in there. But
from what it looks like,
what's funny about this whole thing, the Bills have won every game since then. So now it's called the sacrificial pit.
There you go. Let somebody all know.
I have an idea, proposition. We need to get Taylor Swift in that pit. Because I think that would produce about 4 Super Bowls, right? If my math's correct here.
The gods would frown upon that sacrifice, Eric. She is too,
I mean, it should be okay. We'll get her out, clean her up. But 4 Super Bowls, Anthony, I think it's worth it.
She's too sacred, Eric, to the well-being of the universe. That I would not want the karma, dun pun intended, from that action. Karma is a Taylor Swift song. It's Karma. Yeah,
didn't know that.
Okay. Yeah,
yeah. But anyway, I think that would produce at least 4 Super Bowls if you get Taylor Swift in the pit.
Yeah,
at least 4.
Oh God, that's hilarious.
Would be greater.
Just picturing that. I say we throw Travis Kelce in the pit and just leave him there. I mean, that's fine with me. Build the stadium over him.
You can get a hold of him and get him in the pit. That's on you. But
yeah, right. Good luck. He might not be producing much on the field these days, but he's quite the big dude still.
Anyways, had to get that out there just so the listeners could hear, and that's what's really going on here. This is why the Bills are winning games, right? It's the sacrificial pit.
I like it.
Anyway, 31-17. Bills had a very good day overall.
That's right.
They were dominant most of the day, right? And Bills defense held Pittsburgh to 2 turnovers in the first half, 4 punts, right? Meanwhile, Bills scored 21.
Asterisk 3 turnovers in the first half, 2 that were called, 1 that was not, but it was still a turnover. So 3. But yeah, 2
talking about
on the score chart. The fumble on the sideline, yes, it was clearly a fumble. It was a clear recovery. Everybody saw it on the replay, and the refs didn't want to look like idiots for getting 2 calls wrong, so they didn't call that one, even though they should have. No explanation given, just stands, because, again, I think they just didn't want to be wrong, which to me is
that one had me confused.
The call right.
What's the rule there? Okay, if I understand how it's called.
He recovered the ball.
Fumbles it.
Yeah.
But it touched his helmet.
It did not. It looked like it barely grazed.
That's where the argument lies. Let's say it did touch his helmet. That is now plays over?
I don't know.
Because he's out of bounds.
Because he's out of bounds, I would imagine, yes. But it did not look like it touched his helmet. In fact, the initial ruling was that it was not recovered in bounds, which was clearly seen on the replay.
Correct.
I mean, he had the ball in bounds and slid out of bounds. So it was clear that part
clear fumble,
was not right.
Clearly recovered. It just really confused.
That's why they just said stands, but I hate when they get that play wrong. Just call it the way you should, right? All turnovers are reviewed automatically. Call it a turnover. Same thing with touchdowns. I say it all the time. Just call it a touchdown, review it. The problem with that is then they're like, well, the There's mostly evidence, but there isn't enough evidence. And yet on some of these calls I see all the time, I'm like, that looks pretty clear, and they still won't turn it over. Overturn it, I should say, not turn it over, but overturn
Right.
it. And it's ridiculous sometimes. And this was one where I'm like, just because your ego's in the way, you're not going to call a turnover. And it was crucial because it's like 5 minutes into the game and Bills lost their ability to challenge because of that, even though we got the first one
right. The first quarter, right?
Another thing that you're like, you got the first one right. You should still have 2 challenges and not, you got the second one wrong, so now you're done. It's a weird rule overall, but maybe that's something they'll change for the future or look at the future, because it does seem odd that if you get the first call right, but the second one wrong, then you don't get any.
Yeah. I wonder if anybody from the media asked the question the refs on that. We have to go back and look.
I don't think so.
Sometimes you'll see, I usually find it on Twitter from one of the media people, and there's like a Q&A with the refs, and they'll put their answer in there. Most of the time it's justification. That's what it feels like, but I'd like to read that one because I just don't understand that rule.
Neither do I, and it didn't look to me like it hit his helmet. But anyway, yes, the Bills did get 2 turnovers in the half and should have had a third. Overall good offense, defense. The defense, man. Wow.
Yeah.
We got to talk about the defense. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Sean McDermott deserves coach of the year, right? Like, period. End of story. Because when you're talking about 4th, 5th string guys, scrubs who were literally on vacation, and you signed them, not that AJ Klein is a scrub, but he had a huge game, led the team in tackles, was all over the field. They were targeting him because you can gouge plays on him, which we've seen, but man, those guys were all over. Elam, who was written off for dead, right? Made a play, huge play, interception in the end zone. The defense was phenomenal. And I honestly think people need to give McDermott the respect he deserves. I know people were firing him at 6-6, and we all had the conversation. Is it time? Can this team move on from him? Like it or not, Sean McDermott is the best defensive coach in the NFL. He gets the most from the least. To me, that makes you the best coach. You are coaching those guys up. You are getting the most out of them. Even the lowest guy on the totem pole. Any other team, if you put in their 4th, 5th string guy, whoever they're against is going to have a field day. Just run the ball down their throat or throw the ball at them if it's a cornerback. Those guys aren't going to withstand. And this Bills team did, because Sean McDermott has the team ready to go and gets the most out of his defensive guys, especially, right? And to me, again, he's the best defensive coach in the NFL, period, full stop. I don't think there's an argument there.
Yeah, and we know he can develop talent, but also the continuity piece, right?
Yeah.
Carries a lot of players, from year to year. A lot of those players have been in the system we're going on for 4 years, I would say the majority, right? You got a couple new people, but there's a lot of continuity in that defense, so they know it and know it well, right? And I think that helps. But yeah, I think time and time again, and we say this at least 10 times a year, it feels like, Sean McDermott can develop talent, right? He could teach a cat to play cornerback.
Exactly.
And it's interesting because you got a talent like Kaiir Elam, but the Benford beats him out. Dane Jackson beats him out. These later round draft picks are get a lot more playing time. So I don't know if it's something personal with Kaiir Elam, but we know the talent's there, right? And he did have a lot of bad plays, right? Pass interference was pretty ugly.
Right
saw him get beat a few times. He got ran over on a tackle, which will happen. But he bounces back, right? And you just love to see that. Like, I'd love to see Kaiir Elam get his confidence back, get back on track in development, and maybe win out the job next year, right? But one thing we do know about Kaiir Elam, when he plays in wildcard games, he gets turnovers.
He steps up. Yeah, right.
He does. That's 2 years in a row now. So
yeah. And, hopefully, the guys who went down, there were a few guys who were out for the game, right? But the guys who went down during the game, scary, concerning. But, the fact that our depth was able to step up and get it done just tells you how well-rounded and how strong this team really is.
Right. Well, Dorian Williams comes to mind as well, right?
Yeah.
A guy we've kind of seen think a lot, right? And they say this a lot in, Bill's interviews with players, and Sean McDermott mentions it at times. They don't want their players to do a lot of thinking. You should know this system so well that you're just reacting to what you're seeing. And I think Dorian Williams, made a jump in that area, right? He was playing a lot more confident. He was making plays, making solid tackles. I mean, I feel like he's done a lot of thinking this year, right? And which is expected to some extent with a rookie. But yeah, he's been asked to step up, and I think he did in this game, right? And we'll see if that carries over. But that's definitely something to point out. AJ Klein, filled the role. Definitely not as not as mobile or not as good in coverage as Terrell Bernard, but a veteran guy who's been in this system in and out for a number of years, right? So can call the plays. I'm sure it was simplified at some point, but so a lot of people stepped up in this game on defense, and I think that's a credit to Sean McDermott, like you mentioned. But also, let's keep in mind you're playing Mason Rudolph. Hasn't played a lot of football this year. He's the third string on that team, right? So there's not a lot of there's not a lot to worry about.
String, right?
Sure,
that's a key thing to say. Pickett's healthy. They kept him on the bench. They chose to keep this quarterback in there, and that's their idea, saying this guy's better than him. Okay, well, this is a guy you're rolling out then. And he's won 3 straight games in a row for them playing good football, smart football, low turnover football, all that, right? Making big plays in every single one of those wins. And now against the Bills, he pretty much got shut down. I mean, they made a few big plays, but
and I think the key to that is what we mentioned in the preview show is you got to stop the run, right? Mm-hmm. And the Bills did a great job of that. I mean, Warren had a few nice runs, but most of the day, like, you didn't really notice the Pittsburgh run game because the Bills were shutting it down.
I got to tell you, man, Warren is like a bowling ball out there. He doesn't look like one of those big, beefy, strong backs who just, runs it up there. But every single play after contact, he was carrying 3 more yards. It was fun to watch him and be like, wow, this kid's really good, actually, And I knew that coming in. I was high on him in the preseason. I said he would take Najee Harris's job. But this, seeing him in action in a playoff game, just you could see why they're so high on him, because
he's been the only person in the run game to make plays for them. I mean, they had a little hot streak late in the season, but early on, it was just Warren.
Anytime you can bounce off and get 8 yards, after contact, it seemed like he was just rolling for that. He'd hit, roll down, boom, 8 yards later, he's down. So I was impressed with him. But they weren't able to maintain the run, and then they got down by a lot, which made them force the pass a little bit. The Bills did exactly what they wanted to and controlled the clock. All the things that you could put in the plus column here would go the Bills' way.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of that's Josh Allen, right? This is one of the better halves we've seen from Josh Allen all year. Yeah. No turnovers, right? 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing. And, when you're stopping the Steelers offense and they're punting and you're getting turnovers, the offense actually followed through and finished the drives this time, right? And that's why you get the result you get, being up 21-0 or 21-7. That's huge, right? And that's kind of what's been missing is the defense has really been pretty consistent most of the year. It's just the offense hasn't been able to capitalize all the time. I think that really came together in this game. Starts with Josh Allen. He played a great game, looked confident, didn't no hero ball early on, right? Looked under control, took what the defense gave him. I mean, this is some of the Josh Allen that you could see if he would just stop being reckless at times. And then I understand that turns into plays as well. He's a unique talent for sure. But I mean, if you just play the position with his talent, I mean, you can get really great results, right? His ceiling is incredibly, incredibly high. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you saw a little sample of that, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And the offense as a whole, I mean, it wasn't even, again, I think we've said this multiple times this year, it wasn't even its most efficient, the offense for the Bills, right? That's what you see, that there still is more to be had there. There was more plays. There was a few drops. There was a few gimmies that they missed, and a few mistakes. Overall, very clean and points. And the big plays, you mentioned the Josh Allen run, Khalil Shakir becoming still a reliable, because Shakir and Kincaid, how many weeks in a row have we said, get those guys the ball more, because they make plays. They're reliable in the catch point. Shakir's run for the end zone at the last touchdown was something I have never seen out of a Bills wide receiver. The grit, the determination, the just explosiveness. I mean, he just knew he was going to score and he wasn't going to let anybody stop him. And that's just, it's unbelievable to have somebody like that on your side, who's also been a reliable catcher of the ball, right? Which is something you need in a wide receiver. He makes plays. I think it's something like, from Joe Marino's podcast, I heard he's on the season, 43 passes out of 49 targets he's caught. That is absolute insanity, because a target, quote unquote, could be the ball flying over your head, and then,
Right.
he's the target, right? And he's caught 43 out of 49 attempts his way, which is insane numbers right there. And that tells you just how reliable his hands are, and how many times has he made a big play out of that, and you got to credit the whole offense for that as well. But the fact that he's able to get it done is awesome.
Yeah, I'd like to see, because it seems like he's the beneficiary when you have to pay attention to Diggs. If you're the defense, you got 2 tight ends to deal with. James Cook's hot, and you got a running quarterback. It seems like Shakir kind of falls through the cracks a little bit and benefits that way. But Josh Allen did mention in the press conference that defenses are now planning for Shakir.
Yeah,
right.
James Cook too.
And that could be with Gabe Davis out too, right? So
we saw the same thing with James Cook happen, right? His receiving yards are down a lot. The guys are ready for that play when they get him the ball quick now. He's not able to run upfield for a big gain because teams are game planning for him. However, James Cook in the run game was phenomenal, right? He got what he needed to get done. And, it could have been, again, there's more to be had, even though he had a great game. There's more meat on the bone there that I'd like to see. But, even though the pass game has been they shut down the pass game with him, he was still able to get the job done. Cook was all over the field with running the ball, getting plays and yards that mattered, and setting things up for the wide receivers, right? You can't game plan for everybody. So maybe that focus on James Cook does also open it up for Khalil Shakir again. And now if they're game planning for those two, well, guess what? Diggs is still on the field, and he's still going to make his plays too. He was respectable in this game, I thought, made plays that he had to, and really big plays and had energy on the field, which is what you want to see from a leader like that. But overall offense, exactly where we want it to be, moving forward, doing well, being consistent. Gotta love it.
Yeah, gotta love it. Stephon Diggs, 7 receptions on the day, 52 yards. Kincaid leads in yardage with 3 receptions, 59 yards, averaged 20 yards per reception, had the touchdown. Shakir only 31 yards. And James Cook finished the day with 79 yards rushing. But what's interesting is, and this is kind of new for the Bills this year, right? We've been talking about it all season, more rushing attempts than passing attempts in this game.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Although it's close, it's 30 and 30 pass attempts, 34 rush attempts. That's something new, right?
Absolutely. I mean, usually it's double, right, for passes versus runs. But I looked at it, I think it was in the third quarter, early third quarter, and Josh Allen, although he was having a phenomenal game, had like 200 passing yards, I think, or maybe not even yet at that point. And yet we had 17 rush attempts going into the third quarter, which I was like, wow, that's a ton for this game. And I didn't think it was that high. But again, you game plan, what the weaknesses are, you're ready. They were able to play their style of football, execute their game plan efficiently in this manner. And that's not how it's going to be against every team. We know we have Kansas City coming up. We got a lot to talk about with them, but it's going to be a different game plan in that game.
Sure.
And I do expect some gaudy numbers from Josh Allen, I hope for in that game as well. But yeah, this is the way to start the postseason. This is the way to show and gain momentum. We saw it at the end of the game versus the Dolphins, the second half. That was the best Josh Allen we've seen in weeks. And now it carried over into the postseason. 0 turnovers, 4 total touchdowns. Yeah, 3 passes,
4 total.
4 total touchdowns.
No interceptions,
no turnovers, no boneheaded plays, really. I mean, it was an overall great game for Josh Allen, and he's got to continue to carry that momentum forward for these next few games.
Yeah, for sure. Just looking up, okay, Josh Allen hasn't had a turnoverless game since Dallas. Was that on December 17th?
But also, his postseason numbers are absolutely insane, right? I think he had obviously the Bengals game didn't go the way we wanted it to. Other than that, Josh Allen's postseason stats and record, touchdowns to interceptions, whatever you want to look at, it is absolutely insane, especially when you look at, not the first 2 games, but look at the game since then. It's been absolutely electric from Josh Allen in the postseason. He has not been the reason we have lost postseason games. You know, you could give him some of the blame against the Bengals maybe last year, but there was a lot to go around in that game for sure. And now you see that this is postseason Josh Allen. He levels up coming into the postseason. Even that touchdown run, what an energizing play. Like, that's my quarterback. And Bills fans, although we're excited about him, we're going nuts, nobody's surprised. Like, oh my God, I can't believe he just did that. No, that's our quarterback. That's what he does.
Yeah.
Get out of his way. He's going to the end zone. You know,
no, be honest though. You were probably screaming slide.
I did not. So I didn't see that until the replay. It in real time, to me, it looked like he just moved. You know,
I'm not saying he was trying to fake slide. I don't think that was the case.
Well, a lot of people were saying that
coaches are yelling slide. I'm yelling slide. You got the first down, just slide it out. Because from the TV view, you could just see Josh Allen running. There's
toward
3
the
guys
defenders.
There,
yeah.
There's no blockers. You know, they came in a little later, but
even in the post-game press conference, he said, he's like, "Oh, everybody was screaming slide. I didn't, and it worked out for me that time."
It's a tough thing to balance.
I was honestly shocked that none of the backfield guys could catch him. I mean, I know Josh Allen is fast, but those, that's their job, to chase down a guy and tackle him. And they weren't even close. So
what's that? The famous Tom Brady quote: "When it gets cold, you figure out who doesn't want to tackle."
Yeah,
right. It's obvious who doesn't want to tackle.
Yes.
That seemed to be the case on that play.
Mm-hmm.
We concerned at all about Tyler Bass. Had a blocked field goal, had an ugly field goal. That can sometimes mess with your confidence.
Yeah, I mean, I would say overall concerned. No, but at the same time, I am going to be nervous. Do I think it's going to affect Tyler Bass? No, I think he'll go into the next game with a clean slate and say whatever happened, that's fine. We've seen him have bad games this season and still get it done when he needs to, right? So I think that's going to happen with the next game, right? It's a clean slate. It's going to be a little bit warmer, a little bit clearer, whatever. He's going to be fine. And we're still going to go for a 50-something yard field goal, right? I still think if Tyler Bass is your kicker and you have the opportunity to get points on the board, any situation similar to what just happened, you're still kicking it with Tyler Bass, right? You're still going for it.
Yeah.
And he's going to be fine mentally. However, me personally watching, I used to not even 54 yards, 55 yards. He's got this, right? Like, I don't even need to watch.
Yeah.
I know it's going on.
He's shown it time and time again, right?
Yes, exactly.
Gives everybody confidence.
But now you do hold your breath a little bit, and we did for a while I did in the regular season when he was messing up a little bit too. Like, all of a sudden, you're holding your breath on a Tyler Bass extra point. You're talking about a guy who made, what was it, 194 extra points or something in a row. And now he's, I do think it'll make me more nervous than it'll actually affect him. And that's general too. The fan base is going to be more nervous holding their breath than he actually is on the field. So I'm not as concerned about Tyler Bass. Now, if he continues to show a consistent inconsistency, if that makes sense, right? Steady inconsistency, not good. Then something's up and you got to be like, is this in your head? Is this, something physically we're doing wrong? But right now, that's the least of my worries coming out of this game, because there are some other worries coming out of this game for sure.
Yeah, trying to look up. So yeah, he's 24 of 29 on field goals in the regular season. 1 for 3 in this game versus Steelers.
Yeah, and the short one was really more questionable, right? The long field goal in this weather, you got to keep it low, and a guy blocked it, and of course, a block kick that goes backward 50 yards. Like, what the hell was that? But that's going to happen, right? That one didn't throw me off so much as the botched 29-yard field goal that was, really short right there, and he just kicked it sideways. Like, I was like, okay, what the hell just happened? Because that ain't right. And hopefully it was just something he went to the sideline and said, my mechanic was off, my toe slipped. I don't know,
it was,
but
it was between 20 and 29 yards on that field goal.
Yeah, right. Like, you can't miss those, and he absolutely botched it, right? I mean, it was not even close. So that one was more concerning for me. But again, I don't think it carries over. I think he ends up being fine.
Yeah, it is his first miss since the Philadelphia game. And we talked about 50-yarders. He's 4 for 6 on the year from 50 yards.
Exactly.
50 plus. So yeah, still very reliable, but we have seen, when you get a kick blocked, it gets in your head a little bit. But
yeah,
Tyler Bass
momentum.
so reliable. I think he overcomes it, as you mentioned.
That was a big momentum swinger too. That was the first, it was like, okay, we were up, I think 14-0 at the time, or maybe even more. And then they get the ball back in plus territory ready to go, So that was a huge swing from us getting points to them getting the ball in their territory, which was, not a good place to be. Ultimately, though, it didn't matter in the long run. Everybody did their job to stop the Steelers offense and continue the run on offense.
Yeah, so Bills play Sunday at 6:30. Kansas City coming to town. It's going to be a hype game, right? I'm already excited about it, and it's only Tuesday.
Oh,
we'll get into details of that game on Thursday. Normally we kick off at 7:30 if you want to watch us live, but also podcast will be available going into the weekend, so be sure to check that out. What about the Steelers team, though, right? A lot of rumors, a lot of talk that Mike Tomlin might take a year off. He might, I heard one, he might go for the Dallas job, but then today report came out that he informed the team he's going to be staying.
Yeah.
So are we going to see the Steelers, improve, or are we still going to be 9-8 next year like they have been since, for a number of years now? What do you think the Steelers have to do in the offseason to be better next year?
What do the Steelers have to do to be better next year?
Yeah.
Hope that the injuries in their division are sustained. That's their only hope, right? Yes, they are a mediocre team who gets it done, who succeeds expectations, who have a strong defense and a pathetic offense, and that's going to continue to be their identity moving forward under Mike Tomlin. They're good enough to make the playoffs. However, their division is so competitive. I will never pick them in these situations to be the team out of that division that makes the playoffs. I will never pick them in that division to not finish in last place, unless you tell me every other team lost their quarterback, every other team lost their 5 other players, and the Steelers did not, right? So this year it worked out for them, and they earned it. I'm not taking it away from them, but the circumstances were in their favor this year. And I don't think that's going to be the case next year when Joe Burrow is back and, Deshaun Watson and that defense are back. And it's just going to be hard for the Steelers to overcome all of those teams in their own division, let alone the rest of the AFC, which is competitive as it is. So I don't think they stack up. I mean, what could they do? Get another quarterback that's going to be more reliable or whatever?
Right. It's an interesting conversation because Mason Rudolph's now a free agent. Who's their starter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kenny Pickett's still got 2 more years. Trubisky under contract for 2 more years, 24 and 25. So, I mean, what do you got to do here? You got to, is the goal to continue to develop Kenny Pickett? We know Trubisky can't play. We've seen enough, right? Trubisky's had numerous chances. He'll be the backup, in my opinion. Or do you go get a guy, right? You're saying he's not our guy. We're going to go find someone else. Do you bring in a veteran? Because like you said, the division is going to be extremely competitive again next year. Joe Burrow coming back, Lamar Jackson, I'm sure that would carry over. They got young receiver talent there. And Deshaun Watson comes back. Cleveland was 5-1 with Deshaun Watson, like him or hate him.
Yeah.
They won games with him. So
exactly.
It's a great point. And look, I don't know if you continue to develop Kenny Pickett here. I mean, looked pretty limited to me this season. Didn't see a lot of improvement. The offense was really how bad the offense was most of the storyline for the Steelers, right? So I think if you don't bring in a veteran, you don't bring in somebody who can upgrade this quarterback room, that's going to be the same story next year.
Yeah, I mean, and I just don't know how it gets better for them. I think they can improve their team just like any team can through free agency, through the draft. But I think the circumstances in general are bigger than they are, and I will still expect them to be right around this mark, 9-8, 8-9, and miss the playoffs next year because a lot had to add up to them getting the final spot this year.
Right. I think the Bills game would have been maybe a little different with TJ Watt. Still think the Bills controlled most of this game. However, he would have made a play or two, I would assume.
Sure.
Right,
sure.
So that
I'd
hurt
give
them
him
for
that.
sure.
But. Absolutely. Yeah. I'd give him that.
All right. Any other thoughts on the game? I think we're ready to move on. Got our half hour in.
Yeah, other than what I think is our next topic, which was the most painful part of this win, is worrying about
injury.
What happens next, right? Because my God, it was like a shooting range down there. Everybody's falling and down and carts and all this. And I'm like, oh my God, what's next?
Yeah.
Luckily, I think most of the injuries are not major, but we don't know all the details yet. So
and
it's
that's interesting. I hope, I don't know the extent of the injuries, but my thought is Sean McDermott's trying to be conservative,
correct.
right?
Yeah.
Not forcing players back in the game if they, had to get an X-ray, because you got the bigger matchup next week, right?
Correct.
That was kind of my thoughts. But again, I don't know the extent of the injuries. I know from the update today from Sean McDermott, 9 players are day-to-day.
Yeah.
Right? Taron Johnson's in concussion protocol.
Yes.
That's huge, right? I don't know if he misses a game, but something to keep an eye on. He's the key to the defense, in my opinion.
Oh my God. That's what I was going to start with. You start this game without obviously Trey White gone for the year. You bring in Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford. Douglas out for this game, could have played maybe, but they didn't want to press him. And what they saw out of, oh my gosh. Yeah, sure. Third cornerback coming in was
Kyrie
last
Elam,
week. Yes. No. But last week, Christian Benford and who's our other cornerback?
Dane Jackson.
Oh my God. Dane Jackson. Thank you. Dane Jackson was the one I couldn't think of there. He came in last week and did a phenomenal job, right? So they were comfortable coming in with those two in this game again. Well, then Benford goes down with an injury. Then
right. Gets thin really quick. Yeah.
All of a sudden you're down to your literal 5th string guy who was not even active all season, and he's out there starting and playing every snap. That turned really bad really quickly. Same thing at linebacker. Our 2 thinnest positions were stretched even more thin, right? You called up AJ Klein because you knew he was going to have to play snaps. Then all of a sudden, your linebacker both go down, right? I thought Tyler Matakevich was going to come in and play linebacker, and that's an insane thought, right? Like, I don't even think he might take snaps with them in the preseason, but I don't even think he knows how to play.
Do you drop to dime coverage, maybe bring in Seren Neal?
That's what I was thinking they were going to do. I thought that maybe they would have to be forced to do something like that. And credit to those guys that we mentioned earlier. They all stepped up, those guys who came in. But it's more about seeing the guys go down. And then Taron Johnson, right, goes down. And he's out of the game. So now you're like, oh, how are we down every single cornerback down to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th string guy?
Yeah. Taron Johnson, there's depth at corner. There's depth at linebacker.
Correct. But
a little bit. It's getting a little thin now.
Yeah.
But there's no depth at nickel corner.
Yeah.
That's slot corner. There's no depth. It's
Cam Lewis.
Taron Johnson.
Like, who are you putting in?
He's on the field 80% of the time anyway, but then making plays all the time. He kind of plays a hybrid role, linebacker, slot corner. The drop off from Taron Johnson to Cam Lewis is huge.
Big. Yes.
So Taron Johnson becomes the most important player on the list, in my opinion.
Yeah, and especially going into a game where you're going to have to cover Travis Kelce, right? You really hope that he can recover from that concussion and get out of concussion protocol and be healthy and ready to go. But if he's not, that's going to be the point that the defense has to focus on, because Patrick Mahomes is going to see that and throw at it. So anyway, with the other injuries, I do think they're going to have to. We didn't even mention the punter, right?
Sam Martin on the list.
Been phenomenal, literal player of the month on special teams, and was great for his first couple of punts in this game. Then he gets hurt on trying to track down the blocked field goal, which he was a holder on, obviously. So he's chasing the ball down, and he comes up limping. And when your punter comes up limping, that's not a good thing, because no team has a second punter, really. And we thought maybe Tyler Bass was going to have to be punting. Luckily, Sam Martin was able to get another punt in there. And hopefully he's ready to go and fine. But you never know if you have to add a punter to the practice squad and make a game day decision, or add more linebacker depth because now AJ Klein is 3rd on your active roster instead of away on the practice squad.
Mm-hmm.
It's a struggle to make sure you have the guys. That's what I was thinking the whole game, honestly. I'm like, what scrubs who are not currently on a roster could the Bills possibly bring in right now that can play actual snaps? You're like, what linebacker is not on a roster right now that can play actual snaps next week?
Well, it was AJ Klein, but you already played that card.
Exactly. Right now he's the starter, and you're like, okay. And you're going to need depth, right? Because if, God forbid, one of those guys goes down, then you're really deep. But hopefully now Terrell Dotson also seems like he can play against Kansas City, which will be good
Yeah.
because he's really stepped up over the last few weeks. And obviously the Terrell Bernard injury was the one where they had to bring the card out. Scary.
Looks like ankle sprain, right, is what I saw. And then,
but luckily nothing broken. Yeah,
that could be
sprain.
2 weeks.
Yeah, right? I mean, it could be 4 weeks, right? We don't know. So I hope that he recovers, but I'm not expecting him to be ready for this game. So I think, again, that's another position where, okay, you're already thin at linebacker. You're already down your starters. These guys just have to step up and get it done. And I think as long as they have the week to game plan for it, that will be okay. And it's not just bringing in the first guy, right? You have to have, again, Sean McDermott knows this and does this well, but the next guy up has to be ready too. And right now, I don't know who the next guy up is at middle linebacker, right?
No.
Because
you assume it's Dotson, AJ Klein, I think, is in the conversation because calling the plays. But I think because he hasn't been with the team that long, the playbook's more limited.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that makes it really challenging. Hopefully Dotson can get back in there. Braylon Spector as well.
He was playing before he got.
We already mentioned Douglas. Already mentioned Benford. Taylor Rapp also on the list.
Rapp was out, right? Hopefully he can come back next week. Yeah.
Yeah. And day to day, I'm not sure what day to day means, but I think that just means they're injured, but we're not going to tell you anything.
Exactly. Yeah, it's mysterious.
Also, Gabe Davis, the only offensive player on the list.
Right. And I think again, I don't think the offense missed him when he went out in that game. I don't think the offense missed him this week, being out of the lineup. I think that speaks to Gabe Davis's future with this team.
This is playoff Gabe, though. Like, he might be inconsistent in the regular season, but playoff Gabe. They need playoff Gabe.
One game with 4 touchdowns does not make you playoff Gabe. I'm sorry.
Well, I feel like it does add another element to the offense because you got to pay attention to 2 tight ends. James Cook has emerged.
Sure.
Obviously, you got to pay attention to Diggs. Gabe Davis now becomes a factor.
But I don't want
you
to
can't
throw
guard
the
everybody.
Ball. I would rather throw the ball to, Khalil Shakir or get it to Kincaid or one of those other guys you mentioned.
Sure, but
you're not going to cover all 4 of them. Knox had a great game. Knox had a touchdown. He had a drop as well.
Sure.
But
you take what the defense gives you, right? And if they focus on the tight ends, okay,
right?
We'll
Davis.
Put it
this way: Gabe Davis is an upgrade over Andy Isabella, right? So we can agree on that. Absolutely, I'd rather have Gabe Davis out there than Andy Isabella, but I still
Isabella
think
1 target, no catches. Right?
When it comes down to it, I would. The offense looks good the way it's going, and although Gabe can add a different element to that and maybe take some attention, don't fix what isn't broken, right? So keep the momentum going the way it's working.
Yes.
And he had a great block, and he did this and all that.
Yeah.
It's the inconsistency that we've talked about from Gabe that scares me away from him. I would rather those throws go to guys like Shakir and Kincaid, who are reliable with their hands, than throw a ball to Gabe Davis that should be caught and isn't, and then pisses me off for the rest of the game. And then he doesn't get a target anyway, right? So
I think playoff Gabe's different, and I'd love to see him on the field. But
I hope so. I'm rooting for that because
we'll talk.
I'm hopeful that he will be back for this game, but I'm not certain. We obviously don't have an update yet.
Right, and probably not going to get much of an update until later in the week. Also, we'll talk about Kansas City's injuries, right? Is that a factor? How banged up are they? Are they looking healthy? I'll talk about all of that on Thursday.
Yeah, of note, the Bills 2 weeks ago, clean bill of health. Not a single guy on the injury report. Going to Miami, some guys go down. We play it conservative. We keep them out. And then the game at home just takes guys out left and right. And hopefully
playoff football is physical, right? It's a different speed. Everyone's giving their best effort. It's ugly.
You could see it out there on the field. You could see how gritty it was. Yeah.
Right. And when you have a lead, not a lot of time left, why not play some of the depth players if you have a couple guys banged up? So again, it comes down to the seriousness of the injury, and they're not going to give us that information until later, right? Because it's a competitive
game
advantage,
time till Thursday when the report is due or whatever.
Exactly. All right, other games around the league from Wild Card Weekend. This is really kind of a boring playoff weekend compared to others, right? I mean, they're always fun to watch, but they're blowouts.
True. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed there. Okay.
Yes.
So we could start with the first game, the Texans versus the Browns. Everybody and their mother picked the Browns just because their defense was phenomenal. They've been able to get offense under Joe Flacco. A rookie, CJ Stroud, has had a great season, but he's coming into the, postseason. We don't know what to expect with him against a really good defense and all that. Even me, Texan Stan, I cannot believe I even said my heart was with them. And trust me, I was excited for them that they were able to get that win and excited watching.
Well, it's impressive. I mean, D'Amico Ryans had his guys ready, right?
Absolutely.
Stroud had a good game. Defense was clearly more physical, right? They played a really physical game. So they were ready, and they had the home field advantage there. I mean, it's just working. Everything's working for them.
I was about to say that as well.
Nico Collins again looking real out there.
But now I've been saying that for years that I like Nico Collins. I think he's the guy. And coming into the season in almost every fantasy league, I drafted him where I could.
And I know we've covered the draft the last few years. Your guys had a good. Every time they mentioned Brevin Jordan, I'm like, oh, that's Anthony's guy.
Yeah,
huge play. Then Romeo Dubes, huge
in 3 years is what I said. And guess what? This is that year that I said that he would, come out and emerge as the guy, and he makes plays.
Funny. That had me laughing because I knew you were going
Brevin Jordan. Woo! Yeah, and same thing. Nico, Brevin Jordan. This team, I just really like this Texans team, and I think they have a good matchup against a team that they could beat again next week. So I'm rooting for the Texans. That. But I was even surprised that they whomped. I mean, they crushed the Browns.
Well, yeah. And it came down to, like we talked about, like Joe Flacco. What's Joe Flacco are you going to get? Are you going to get 350 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, Joe Flacco, or are you going to get 3 interceptions, Joe Flacco? And definitely the turnovers just killed them. They had chances to come back and make the game close, but those 2 pick sixes were just brutal. You can't overcome that in any game, right? Let alone a playoff game. So, yeah.
So we started out the playoffs with a shocker, right? Nobody and they showed. I saw clips of Vegas bettors who put the house on Cleveland, basically, and it was quiet as a mouse in there. They're all like, "Oh my god!" They're just stunned. Right, stunned, and it was fun to watch. Even me, I lost money on that game, but I didn't bet.
Cleveland's they're a quarterback away, right? And they did not find the answer all year. I know Flacco had some good games, but as good as that defense was all season, they should have won a playoff game, right?
Absolutely.
Those 2 pick sixes were just absolutely brutal, and the Achilles heel, got them knocked out, right?
I think the Browns for the teams that lost, right? The Browns were the team I felt bad for. They deserved to get a win in the playoffs. They were good enough to get a win in the playoffs. They had the momentum enough to get the win in the playoffs. They just went up against another team that wanted it as much as they did, right? Like, not to use a cliche term, but that really got a big win out of it, right? And the rest of the teams that lost deserved to lose and were, showed who they really were. But the Browns were really the one that I thought I didn't want to see go home.
Yeah, moving on to some of the other ones here. Green Bay upsets Dallas, right?
Wow.
I picked Green Bay as the upset because, look, Jordan Love has been playing great as of late.
Yes.
And that's, he's really taken another step, right? The Packers have won 4 in a row now, counting the wild card game. Jordan Love in 9 games, the last 9 games, 1 interception, 23 touchdowns, 2 rushing, 21 passing.
Wow.
His quarterback rating in this game versus Dallas, 157. His QBR, 99.
That's pretty good. Yeah. It's a pretty good day.
Yeah. Looking pretty good for Green Bay, right?
Yes, that is. I mean, obviously what I said on the show, one of the questions you asked last week was, does Green Bay have a shot? I think they're going to win. You called it. And I said, the only way I think Green Bay wins, their chance is to go up 14-0 and demoralize the defense, which demoralizes the team. And guess what? As soon as they scored that second touchdown and went up 14-0, I said, this game's over, because Dallas cannot come back from a big deficit. And they've just lost momentum. And then it just got worse and worse and more embarrassing. And the stat line doesn't do this game justice at all. Dallas was embarrassed on their home turf, slapped in the face. I mean, it was gross.
Well, again, it's the same story with Dallas every year. You get too hot too early, burn out in the playoffs, right? And that happened to the Eagles this year as well. But Dallas, since they beat the Eagles in week 14, they lost to Buffalo, and a huge loss. They struggled against the Dolphins, and they ultimately lost that seemed like a field goal game, right? They get their lucky win versus the Lions, which was refs, right? Lions had them beat.
Yes, they lost.
Should have at least went to overtime, for dealing with normal personalities. they did blow out the Commanders, but literally the Commanders lost all 9 of their last 9 games, right? 9 in a row. And then Green Bay comes in and embarrasses them, right? So they just got cold. Before the Eagles game, they won 7 out of 8.
Yes. And what I said still stands as well. I'm mad that the Cowboys lost, but only because that is the talking point for the season. Nobody cares who wins the Super Bowl. Nobody cares what else happens. Come September, the only thing people are going to talk about is how last year Dallas embarrassed themselves by losing in the first round of the playoffs at home. And I did not want that to be the story of 2023 NFL season, but now it is. And no matter who wins, no matter what happens going forward, no matter what records are broken, that's what people are going to talk about coming into the next NFL season. And I hate that. I hate that that's going to be plastered on every TV screen and everybody's going to talk about the same thing. But they deserve to lose. They beat 2 teams, two teams that were good. One of them was the Eagles, who we're going to talk about in a second, also being disappointing. And then the other was the Lions, who we said got robbed, basically, of that game. So Dallas couldn't beat a good team all year. So I knew they were inconsistent all year, and it doesn't surprise me that they got upset because they weren't a team I thought was going to be.
And at the time they beat the Eagles, we're thinking, oh, wow, this Dallas team did show up, and they did beat a good team.
Yeah.
But no. The Eagles had the same problem.
The Eagles aren't a good team. Yeah. So, I mean, they were 10-1. And this to me is just epic collapse, right? I mean, you can't.
They've won 1 game in the last 7. Yeah. Before that, they won 10 of 11. So something happened, right? And it's not leaking yet, which is odd. Something.
Yeah, some has.
Normally things leak out a little bit, but
you've heard rumors that the locker room was lost, that the players didn't know who was play calling, if it was really the OC or if the head coach took over, or if and it was questionable.
I know they wanted Jalen Hurts to be more vocal as a leader.
Yes,
that report came out.
Yeah, I mean, to lose a team this badly, right? Even my prediction last week, I said the Eagles will win because they're the better team, they're the better roster. Ultimately, that's what wins in my mind. It didn't, because the Eagles were not playing as a team. I mean, that's what I saw the whole game.
Wild.
They were not playing with their brains. They were just like
defense
robots out there. It was like robots calling, okay, move this way, go that way. And there was no chemistry. The energy, you could tell they felt defeated before the game even started. Even going into the half, I'm like, the Eagles have played one of the worst halves of football I have ever seen in my life, and they are a touchdown away from tying the game. And they could have scored. Just get it done, right? Take it. It was right there for you. This Bucs team is shitty. That's what matters. You can beat them. And yet they couldn't get it done. And I just found myself saying the same thing over and over watching that whole game. God, what is wrong with this team? Just get it done. And that ultimately, to me, does come down to leadership. We know they had a new offensive and defensive coordinator coming in because they exceeded expectations. Those guys got head coaching jobs. And all season long, it's been questioning their, are they good enough there? Are they good enough here? Are they making the right calls? Whatever. Any new offensive, defensive coordinator is going to face that. I thought going into the postseason, they would be ready to go by now. But
again, getting too hot too early.
Again, to me, that speaks to
story, right?
Head coach. And now we're talking about a head coach who was the darling who brought his team to the Super Bowl last year, who's now going to be out on his ass, in my mind, because there's no way you can keep him as head coach after this epic of a collapse. The head coach, the offense coordinator, defense coordinator, they got to be sent packing, and you got to figure it out. Because if Jalen Hurts is your guy moving forward, you need to build around him and get him in the right headspace moving forward.
Which they've done, right? With AJ Brown, Devontae Smith,
absolutely. No, that's what I mean. But you have to be able to. Your team
keep
was
them engaged, keep them motivated, right? That's a challenge.
The team you brought into this year was better than the team you brought to the Super Bowl last year, without a doubt. And you still found a way to screw it up. And let me tell you, that defense was absolutely embarrassing. The Bills historically are a bad tackling defense. The Bills historically 10 years ago even could not tackle, anybody, right? Bad. This Eagles team, I mean, they weren't even trying to tackle. They were not trying to tackle. They did not care. They literally just let guys run right through them, walk around them, jump
receivers
over
are
them.
wide open.
I mean,
A lot of plays, yeah.
it was like the defenders didn't have arms or were Vaselined up and the other guy wasn't. You're just slipping all over the place.
Yeah.
Embarrassingly bad. I mean, every play that mattered, I saw 4, 5 missed tackles on one play. So I can't even imagine what the total was in this game. Absolutely unacceptable for any NFL players to go on the field and have that happen to them. Any NFL players. I don't care if you're the special teams guy who made one appearance once. You got to do better at tackling than that. And again, I think that speaks to motivation rather than talent. Those guys are talented enough to make those tackles. They weren't because they came into this game already feeling like they lost. And you can't have that.
Yeah, Tampa Bay total yards on the day 426, Eagles 276. And it was interesting going into the game because we talked about, Tampa Bay's had a running game problem all year. They're dead last in the league in rushing yards. Just couldn't get anything going all season long. But they come in here and they have success. I mean, 6 yards per play, 119 yards rushing. I mean, and that just, 23 first downs for them. I mean, that's just kind of uncharacteristic for what Tampa Bay has been this season. But yeah, it's more about
the
Philly
rushing game
collapsing than it is.
It was.
And let's not take away anything. Baker played a good game. Bucs in general played a good game. But really just felt like the Eagles weren't being competitive, right? Didn't want to be competitive.
Yeah. I don't
kind of the vibe I get because you mentioned it. I mean, they had their opportunities. It was all there for them. Just didn't capitalize, right? And that's just, you just hate to see that because a lot of people picked the Eagles for the Super Bowl. I picked Dallas, so that dream's dead. It was never a dream, but I picked Bills, Dallas. Early in the season. Would have been fun to talk shit about that, but you picked the 49ers, right? So you're still alive in the Super Bowl pick.
Well, no, I picked the Eagles to beat the 49ers.
Okay, so we're both
in the
done.
NFC
we're both done.
Yeah. So
well,
NFC Championship, last year I had 49ers, but this year I picked the Eagles over them. And so we'll see. I mean, now I think I don't care who comes out of the NFC as long as the Bills are in the AFC. That's fine with me.
Well, hey, little Detroit Lions maybe, huh? Championship game for the Detroit Lions. That would be pretty interesting, right? But yeah, nailed this one on the head too, right? What I say, I picked the Rams +3. Thought it'd be a close game, and I picked the Lions would win by 1. And guess what happened? Lions win by 1.
That
close
was the most
game.
Yeah.
Really good game. Best game of the weekend, right? If you're looking at like most engaging game, right?
Yeah. Most frustrating in a lot of ways. As a neutral fan, as a fan who had bet the Lions -3, I was angry, right? I'm like, the second half, because the first half ended, I'm like, oh, this is cake, baby. I got my money. And then the second half, the Lions just evaporate on the field and allow Green Bay to get all the way to the red zone, but settle for a field goal 3 different times in a row. And I'm like, you cannot be serious. They're up by 4. They're going to give up a field goal. And sure enough, that's what happened for them to lose by 1. But the general feeling in this game, watching neutrally, the frustration from the Packers side is like, the second half, you've gotten down the field every single drive. Score a damn touchdown. What are you doing? Like, how do you not get points? You should be scoring. They should have outscored them 24-0 in the second half. And they didn't. They just didn't get the job done. And then from the Lions standpoint, it's like, okay, you just need to go out there and play the same football you did in the first half.
Stay physical, right?
Be ready for
running game going. The running game's very effective.
And they fell apart. They couldn't do anything. It's like, what happened? All the first downs. What happened to, the defense stopping them at least a little bit? Nope, did not. Every drive. But the clock ultimately was the Lions' best friend here, I thought. And, if the Rams had one more drive in them, they would have won the game. So, I mean, that's all they needed was the ball one more time to get another field goal, and they would have won the game. But the Lions eke it out, and I'm so happy for them. I love that this was the first victory for them. Again, only their second playoff victory ever in NFL history.
Yeah.
And their first since 1991.
Right.
So,
that's wild. 32 years.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. So good for them.
It was a fun environment, right?
Story of the postseason.
Electric. You got fans crying in the seats, right? I mean, that's what's good about sports, right?
Yes,
you're
we know that
attached, and when it actually happens, though, it's just like the best feeling ever. Yes,
I mean?
It's like when the Bills broke the drought. It was literally the best feeling ever.
Exactly, and that's why I loved it, because I could wholeheartedly relate to that. Personally, in my
Sure.
own life, I've lived that. And to see them get over that hump fulfilled my heart again, the way when the Bills broke the drought or when the Bills won a postseason game and started, being a dominant team again. So we know what that feels like, and
Yeah.
it just felt good to see it happen for them.
Yeah, and happy for Jared Goff, right? I mean, Rams traded him away. We can go back to those narratives. Okay, he's not can't read the playbook good enough, right? Never gonna be a consistent winner. He did have the Super Bowl, but I don't know if his relationships with Sean McVay, stuff like that, went south. But they dumped him to Detroit. At the time, it seemed like the Rams really won that, and
Yeah.
I guess they did, right? They got their Super Bowl. Matt Stafford got a Super Bowl. Matt Stafford still playing at a high level. But now the Lions now kind of going for the crown here. I mean, that would be wild if Jared Goff wins a Super Bowl, right? That would be insane. Like that would be the greatest trade of all time. Both teams benefit. Both teams get rings. That would be quite the story. But yeah, really, and we mentioned it. Last thought here on the Lions is they're just more physical. I just thought all day they were more physical than the Rams, right? And that showed up, right? And that's why they get this win.
And
if they can, and they always run the ball effectively, which opens up that play action, and that's just so hard to guard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, especially
so hard to play against.
Receivers, right? I'm on Sam Brown.
Right.
Phenomenal.
Josh Reynolds had a
catches.
huge game.
Yeah,
Laporta, the rookie tight end's been huge for them, but it's all based on David Montgomery getting yards and Jahmyr Gibbs, getting chunk runs, right? And it's working really well for them. So I think they're in a prime position, right? Like we talk about with the
playing
Bills
at home again.
It's all there for you to get to the Super Bowl. It's there for the Lions. It's right there for you. You got another home game versus the team with the worst record in the playoffs. I know Green Bay and the Bucs had the same record, but I think Green Bay is better than the Bucs. So I'd say they're the worst team in the playoffs, right? If you're looking at stats and the kind of what they've been all season.
Sets up very nice.
You couldn't ask for a better scenario for the Lions, right?
Exactly.
All right, so that's the good. The bad, darkness for the Dolphins, right? You lose your last two key games. You lose the division. You get knocked out of the playoffs, right? When you were really one of the best teams in the league, I thought, early on. And they also lost their fins up motto.
Yeah, right. I was going to mention that too. I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So not even
bad week for the Dolphins.
Just lose everything. Like, what's your slogan? Fins up. Wait a minute. We can't use that.
You lost
anymore.
it to Margaritaville. That just hurts even more, right? It's just like you got to do this now, right now. Oh, geez.
So in search of new quarterback, new everything.
Yes.
Gotta love it.
Yeah. And now the Dolphins move to the longest drought without a playoff win. The Jets hold the longest playoff drought, both AFC East teams. And just reminded me of the Patriots' success. And it's like these AFC East teams have been bad for so long.
Yeah.
So long, I mean, the Bills got out of it, but I mean, the Jets and Dolphins just have not had their shit together for a very long time.
Yeah, if you go back to the beginning of the season, I said the Dolphins collapse at the end, and that's exactly what happened here. Now, you do have to credit it to them having 7 starters out on defense.
Sure,
I think it was.
Yeah,
that's insane, right? And you could see
almost
that
not a fair fight at that point. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it was just it was sad to see. But ultimately, what I was more disappointed in is their offense. Now, Kansas City's defense is good, but the Dolphins' offense needed to come into that game knowing that we can't rely on the defense with all these injuries. They'll get done what they can for us, but we need to.
They're a little too determined to run the football, I thought.
Yeah.
They kept trying to do that off tackle play with Mostert, and they wouldn't stop trying, right? And Kansas City clearly prepared for that all week. They were ready for it. They're going sideline to sideline. I mean, you can tell that was one of their key points on the practice week. But I mean, I just thought the play calling was just wouldn't stop trying that, right? The screen plays, I mean, Kansas City's playing really close to the line because they know it's going to be a screen or an off tackle play. And I thought they should have took a lot more shots deep, right?
Yes.
And it comes back to their offense really got predictable towards the end, I thought. It's the same 6 types of plays, right? The seam, but behind the linebackers in the zone, that little hole in the zone. They love playing that. It's the screen plays and this Mostert off tackle, right?
Yeah, and when you have a defense that's good, again, the Dolphins haven't beat anybody good all year. They beat Dallas. That was a joke now, right? So It's like, who did the Dolphins beat? They lost to everybody else who was good.
Dolphins are their biggest win, or the
And
Cowboys was the
Cowboys,
biggest
and
win. Yeah.
we already debunked the Cowboys as a fake team. So that game being what it was, now shows true that both of those teams were fakers in the playoffs here, and it stinks for Miami, but they can blame it on injuries, they can blame it on whatever they want. Their execution was simply not good enough, and it was mainly the offense that I'm talking about, not the defense. And I think it bodes well. You could say the same thing about Mahomes. That offense was not good. They haven't been good all year, and the defense was beat up, right? And they still didn't capitalize on that. It's not like they scored 40 points or something. It was not pretty for them at times.
Yes.
And they did what they had to get the win. That's what matters. And they earned it.
I got to mention this. It's one of my favorite Warren Buffett quotes. Only when the tide goes out do you learn who's been swimming naked. And in his context, he's talking about the market, right? When the market tanks,
settles.
You start to see what financial institutions were faking their numbers and stuff like that. I think that quote absolutely is true for football, right? When things get really tough in the playoffs, you find out who was the soft team all along.
I like it.
You know? So, yeah, the Dolphins definitely swimming naked most of the year. Sad.
Yep. They were fake.
Yeah, tough.
And they have a lot to think about in the offseason. Right? Like now fans are so upset about everything. Well, as Bills fans, we laugh, but it is kind of,
it's a big offseason for them. You got to pay the quarterback, right? It sounds like that's going to happen. Continue to find speed. I think they got a lot of talent there, right? Still, that's going to carry over to next year. A-Chain had a phenomenal rookie year. I think he'll get better next year. I'd say for them, try to maintain continuity. I'm not sure if their cornerbacks will be back, right? I think maybe Xavier Howard's contract's up, but expand the playbook a little more is what I would say if I was a Dolphins fan interested in that. Got to find a new identity next year. Get a little more physical. Fix the O-line a little bit. But yeah, they had a great year.
Lots to do.
There's 31 disappointed teams at the end of the year.
Yeah, they're still going to be a competitive team next year, I think, right? As long as they get the deals done that they need to, right? With especially the quarterback position figured out, then they should be competitive moving forward. Now, whether that means all of a sudden they're good enough to get over the hump, aka the Buffalo Bills in the AFC East, is another story, because you could make the same argument for the Bills that they're going to be consistent again next year.
Hopefully. We're too far. Still in the hunt here. Trying to get that Super Bowl. My hopes are back up.
Dolphins are already looking to next year, not the Bills.
Well, for the Bills, it's Super Bowl or bust, right? You're going to be wildly disappointed if they don't make it to the Super Bowl.
Yes.
That's the expectation this year.
100%. Every year now. Yeah.
So they got our hopes back up.
You need to make it.
Yeah. Anyway. Any last thoughts? Think we're good. Covered a lot tonight. Really a great Super Wild Card weekend. And,
we talked about one thought that I had. We talked about the matchups in the AFC and how some of them didn't go the way we predicted. The seeds remaining 1, 2, 3, and 4. How crazy! I mean, there were no upsets really.
Wow,
no upsets.
No upsets in that way. Very interesting.
Yeah, in the seeding, but we know
the division winners.
Correct. Yeah, right. So but in the NFC, obviously, you had the 7 beating the 2, which was the huge upset. And then the Lions and the technically Tampa Bay being the underdog.
Right, so no teams lost.
But at home, opposite.
No teams on the road won. All the teams who had home field.
Green Bay won. Yeah. Oh,
Green Bay. Green Bay's the only one. Yep.
Green Bay's the one. The 7 beat the 2, which was also the first time a 7 beat a 2. So, yeah. I mean, it's only been 3 years now.
2 years.
So, yeah. So this is the 3rd year. Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting to say the least, that 1, 2, 3, 4, and I didn't think about that until I saw it, the numbers on the screen, and I'm like,
home field,
holy cow, 1, 2, 3, and 4, like, look at that.
Well, because the fans show up for playoff games, right? It's physical, it's cold in most places, so it's tough to go on the road in the playoffs, no doubt. That's why we're excited about Kansas City going to Buffalo.
Oh, for the first time.
Mahomes on the road.
He has no idea what he's getting into. Quite literally. He's never been there. He has no idea what it's getting into.
I'm not sure what the better storyline is. Pat Mahomes going to Buffalo or Taylor Swift staying in a Buffalo hotel. I'm not sure which one's better.
I've seen the memes too. Yeah. I've seen too, will the Bills boo Taylor Swift? I'm like, well, if I go, I will not boo Taylor Swift. Okay, I'm not booing her. I'll cheer for her because she might be going home with a Bills player at the end of the day instead of Kelsey. So we'll see.
You can have both. That's okay. Two different market segments,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
She's
Yeah,
technically not on the team.
that's right. Yeah, I'm
All
okay
right.
with it.
That's all we got. We'll talk to you on Thursday. Be sure to tune in for our divisional round preview show. We'll break down all the games, get more in depth on the Bills Chiefs, and looking forward to another great week of football.
Absolutely. And as always, thanks for kicking it with us.